So Machu Picchu was discovered in 1911 by American explorer Hiram Bingham, sitting atop a jungle-covered mountain deep in the Andean Amazon. Now, Hiram Bingham was not looking for the city of Machu Picchu. He was actually looking for the original famous lost city of the Inca known as Vilcabamba, which was one of the last strongholds during the final days of the Inca Empire. But that's a subject for another video. That said, the craziest thing about Machu Picchu is that it's a city that was never supposed to be found. In no historical record of all of the times that the Spanish people interrogated and tortured and pulled information out of the Inca, never once did they ever spill the name, as far as we know, of the city of Machu Picchu. Now, Machu Picchu is actually just the name of the mountain in which the city sits upon today. The actual name of the ancient city, nobody knows. Now, I've said this on probably a dozen different occasions publicly, but Machu Picchu has to be my favorite ancient archaeological site on the entire planet. The Great Pyramids are amazing, Angkor Wat was amazing, but nothing in the world that I have ever seen or been to feels like standing at Machu Picchu, where you can turn full 360 degrees and everything around you looks like the ancient world. You're really there standing in this ancient lost time above or in this ancient lost city. Now, in a lot of my research, whether it's the first explorers or American wilds, I am diving deep into the very first historical accounts, and sometimes you come across these very rare earliest photos ever taken of these places, and it's interesting to see those. I've also done this when I am researching the Great Pyramids, and you can find the very first photos out at Giza, how much things change over time. And so I thought something really fun to do would be to dive into some of the rarest photos ever taken of Machu Picchu. So when Bingham was preparing for this expedition, he reached out to the camera company Kodak, and they provided him with two custom-made cameras for him to use, a Kodak 3A and a Kodak number 4, which was a panorama. Now, a panorama is what provides these ultra wide photos that you see sometimes like iconically in the early 1900s. This was a pretty popular camera, and it provided very, very high resolution footage, but very, very rarely do people use panorama photos today. But honestly, I think that they're some of the most interesting and evocative cameras in terms of capturing photos that have ever been used. So this first photo is taken from the angle that you walk into Machu Picchu for the first time. So when you come up the mountain, you get off the bus, pay your ticket, you walk through this little wooden jungle-covered walkway, and you go up a couple of staircases. You're now looking into the city. This is the direction that Hiram Bingham himself would have entered the city from at the very first time. Now, this photo very likely comes from 1912 or 1913, after they had done the initial like de-jungling. They're clearing away all the ruins. When Hiram Bingham saw this for the very first time, it would have been almost completely covered in jungle. If you looked closely, you would have been able to tell that there were structures beneath the foliage, but it would not have looked anything like this. Had it looked like this, people maybe would have spotted it sooner. But yeah, fascinating point of view. Now, what's interesting is that peak that you see up there towards the top left that's still in the city of Machu Picchu. I don't believe that that is fully excavated today. I think that a lot of foliage has grown over that left peak, which is interesting because it was cleared off more over about 110 years ago than it is today. Now, this here is the area of the main temple. Whenever you hear people talk about megalithic cyclopean construction at Machu Picchu, this is exactly what they're talking about. This is the inner sanctum, the main temple, sometimes called a palace, sometimes called the Temple of the Moon, even though they're really not sure. They think it has something to do with the lunar alignment, although the alignment doesn't really match up. But to the left right there is probably one of the most impressive, maybe the most impressive case of megalithic cyclopean architecture found throughout the Inca world. Those lower bases that you see of that wall there to the left, that three-sided structure, each of those bases weigh tens of tons. They're carved. This is solid white granite. Sometimes in the Inca world, people get confused between gray andesite and granite, even though they're of similar hardness. Sometimes people can do this with really, really hard basalt. But the entire city of Machu Picchu is made out of granite. The whole city is pulled from the mountain itself, actually. The whole mountain is made out of granite. So even that rough rubble construction that you see to the right, that is all made out of granite, which is still impressive. I mean, just to be able to make a rough structure like that completely out of granite is inherently impressive. But there to the left, I mean, you have these blocks where you can see that the blocks are kind of staggered and falling apart. That is from earthquakes shaking the foundation, and the wall itself is beginning to sink into the foundation of the city. Now, most people don't know this, that more than 60% of the entire construction of Machu Picchu is actually just the city itself. There are water tunnels and channels and aqueducts and possibly actual tunnels meant for humans, ancient Inca priests or the emperor, what have you, going down into the underworld and coming back up. Obviously, these religions are pretty lost to us today, but there seems to be some evidence of the fact that there are human tunnels going down into the foundation of the city, although they've not been excavated or officially located and discovered. But 60% of the construction of the city itself is in the foundation. So earthquakes have shooken the city over the last several centuries, and you can see where even those earthquakes, those walls do not want to fall apart, whereas the walls on the right side largely have fallen apart, maybe not even just from earthquakes, but from the very foliage growing between the blocks and tearing the stones apart from each other. A really, really amazing photograph. I would give anything to have been here in this, walking around the city in the first years that it was discovered. So if you're still cracking open an energy drink or preparing yourself another espresso by 3 p.m., it's probably time to grow up. More caffeine doesn't actually give you more energy. It just masks it, and then when it comes back, it all comes back at once, and that's what we call a crash. Real energy is produced through a process that needs electrolytes, not caffeine. And if you're depleted, there's no amount of caffeine that's going to fix your lack of electrolytes. And I've been guilty of this too. So my resolution for the summer is to energize my afternoons with a much better option. For the last year or so, my wife and I have started every single day with LMNT electrolyte packets. And now, instead of reaching for an energy drink in the afternoon, I've been drinking LMNT's new lemonade iced tea. It just feels like a great option for the summer. It of course has electrolytes, but the black tea extract gives you a much steadier dose of caffeine. So now not only does my energy feel more steady in the afternoon, but by the time the evening comes, I feel much more wound down and ready for bed, meaning that when I get up in the next day, the electrolytes will be even more effective and I'll have even more energy. Their lemonade flavor was already my favorite, but I have to say, I think that the lemonade iced tea might just take the cake. Get a free 8-count sample pack of LMNT's most popular drink mix flavors with any purchase by clicking the link on screen or in the description below. Find your favorite flavor or share with a friend. Thank you so much to LMNT for sponsoring this video. Now back to the show. Another interesting thing about Machu Picchu is that they actually hardly found anything in the city. It's like the Minoan city of Akrotiri. They didn't find much of anything in that city in the way of physical human remains. They did find some jewelry, but a lot of stuff was taken with them. Machu Picchu, like the city of Akrotiri, was strategically and purposely evacuated. And what's very interesting is that in neither of those cases, actually between either of those two cities, this is the first time I'm drawing a comparison between them, do you ever see the name of the city ever mentioned again? It's like it's evacuated. And definitely, I think in the case of Machu Picchu, maybe not in Akrotiri, but Machu Picchu was such a sacred, maybe dare I say holy city, that the Inca purposely never ever told the Spaniards about it. At no point did any Inca person ever mention the city of Machu Picchu or point towards a city that was even vaguely in this area to the Spaniards. Now, this is another angle. You can see right here to the kind of in the middle of the photo to the left side. That's where that inner sanctum is. Now, again, that's one of the only, look around the city. That part right there is one of the only parts of the city that's still standing perfectly because of the size of those cyclopean stones. And this is kind of the interesting thing about Machu Picchu, is it's so hailed for its megalithic construction and its architecture, which the architecture is great once you learn to have an appreciation for ancient architecture in general. But it's not like the whole city looks like that one sanctum area there. That area was built to be holy. That specific area was meant to last forever. Everywhere else in the city most likely was for people to be living in, whether, people have no idea what Machu Picchu was for, whether it was an astronomical observatory, a university, whether it was a birthing house where the emperor comes in on vacation and gets all of his concubines pregnant and they have his children, like it's Playboy Mansion. Nobody really knows. When in reality, it's probably all of that. I mean, when it comes to ancient times, whatever you think it is, just add it all together, and it's probably all of those things simultaneously. This probably was some kind of getaway for the Inca emperor, and as well as an astronomical observatory. Now, the studies that they've done show that they think only several hundred people would have been living at this city. It's not like thousands of people would have been living here. There would have been people living on the sides of the mountains, like on the lower left where you can see that terracing is. And that terracing is one of the most impressive things in all of Peru. It starts at the top and it goes all the way down to the bottom of the mountain, across nearly every single mountain. They have terracing at the top of the center peak right here. This is Huayna Picchu. The city itself, Machu Picchu, actually crawls up Huayna Picchu, and there's terracing all the way around that central peak that you see right there. I've walked up a staircase. I think they call it like the stairway to heaven or the stairway into the sky, and it's the most like mind-bending thing. You just see the staircase going straight into the sky off the side of this cliff, and you kind of lose your balance as you're going up it. You really have to look low to your right and just kind of lean against the mountain, because it's the most like mind-bending angle imaginable, and with the highest stakes imaginable. You slip and fall, you're falling like 700 or 7,000 feet to your death. It's unbelievable. But the Inca were building their terracing up there. They're farming on the sides of these cliffs, and there are structures and buildings up at the top of that mountain. It's just amazing. It probably wouldn't have done you well to be an Inca person who's afraid of heights. I don't think you would have been a very successful Inca if you were afraid of heights, kind of like me. But as I was saying, most of the architecture throughout Machu Picchu is not these megalithic cyclopean walls like you can again see there to the left. And you can see here either the angle of the sun is different and it really accentuates how much that they have cleared away from the city, or this may be 1913 now where a lot of clearing has been done. But you can see that most of the city is not that megalithic cyclopean stonework there. Even though it is cyclopean in some areas where it's tightly packed together, never do you see it quite like that inner sanctum. And I think that what that's telling us is that probably architecture like that is reserved for the inner areas where you are where you're connecting with the gods or the god. I mean, we don't really have a great grasp of Inca religion. We know a lot about it, of what they told the Spaniards, but as far as their mystery cults, if we could call it that, and the inner workings of that, I mean, I would not venture to say that we really have a great understanding of that. Even though we do know a lot. I strongly believe that these ancient Native American cultures were just as secretive back then as they are today, and they're very slow to tell Europeans the actual core parts of their religion, right? So, but what I think is that kind of architecture is very likely reserved for divine ceremonies, places where the emperor and the priests and the shamans go to essentially dine with the gods and be connected to their ancestors. Some of those little niches that you see throughout the Inca world that's in these cyclopean, it's in the cyclopean architecture, they're just big enough that if you could take a mummy and kind of roll them up in that squatting fetal position and sit them in there. I've seen it proposed that there could have been, and I've proposed this in a video before, that they could have taken their ancestors. Maybe they're in there full time, maybe only part of the time, as there are these cemeteries around the sides of Machu Picchu in these little caves, like down on the sides of the mountains that Hiram Bingham and his team discovered from 1911 to 1914 and beyond after that. But there were tons of mummies around the mountain, and they were like packing these mummies in. So mummification is a big part of the Inca world, and it's possible that they're taking people out, carrying them in sacred processions up out of the cave cemeteries or the cave tombs up into the city and placing them in these mummy niches when they're performing divine ceremonies and things like that. That's obviously just a theory. Now you can see right here that these granite blocks, even when the architecture looks more crude, it's actually pretty refined, and they're tightly, nicely packed together. And even though the roofs have fallen in, so the roofs are mostly wood and thatch, but you do have the triangular bases on each side. And even though a lot of those have fallen in, the stones are actually still tightly packed together, and not all the time was there mortar. So even though they're taking roughly hewn stones and packing them together, they're so well packed together that, I mean, look at this. After hundreds and hundreds of years of the jungle growing up around them and covering them up, they're still standing perfectly. In a lot of these places, the architecture is so nice that they just grab the jungle and just peel it off, and it just comes off like a rug over the floor, which is this ancient structure. And you can see how they just peel it back in the perfectly square forms and the trapezoidal doorways that they're still able to create, even with these roughly hewn stones, are still perfectly there, just as they would have been in ancient times. I love the mountains and the clouds in the background. I mean, if we were to be able to add color to this is actually what Machu Picchu looks like. That what you see off in the distance, as wild and pristine as it was 110 years ago or so, it's just like that today. And that's kind of the thing that's so evocative about Machu Picchu, is when you find yourself walking around the city and you're able to find this little corner of the city alone to yourself, and you can get this view of Huayna Picchu in the background and all of the peaks of the mountains off to your right or to your left or behind you, in front of you, you just know you're looking at the same view that ancient people would have looked at. You're looking at the same view that looked back at this ancient city on the day and all of the days after it was abandoned, in the years of watching the city be grown over by the jungle. Just fascinating. Oh, I'm just now seeing, if you look at that doorway to the right, you can see how tall these roughly hewn doorways are. So these blocks look like they're little. The blocks are actually about this big, each of them. They're all roughly the size of the upper part of your torso. I mean, these are massive, even roughly hewn walls. Having people in the photos really actually helps the scale. These are massive doorways and walls here. If you're enjoying this video, consider subscribing to our Patreon or YouTube members only, where we have another video just like this, exploring the rarest and earliest photos ever taken of the Olmec heads. We also have a weekly YouTube members and Patreon exclusive podcast, as well as a monthly historical film club. See you there. Now, I love this photo. I have never actually stood this high, and I wasn't able to find if this was actually taken from a plane or not, although it must have been taken from a plane, because there's no way that you can get this high. So if this is taken from the ground, this is taken from very far away. Yeah, I don't think that this is taken from the ground, but if it is, it's taken from the very top of Machu Picchu itself, which, much like this photo, is never actually in photos. That iconic shot that you see of the city here with Huayna Picchu in the background, if you turn around, there's another mountain that may be a little bit taller than Huayna Picchu directly behind you, but it's not as stunning as Machu Picchu with Huayna Picchu behind it, so people never take photos of it. But you can climb all the way up to the top, and actually all the way up to the top is where they have found a spring which the people of Machu Picchu, the Inca, turned the spring and modified it to go down into the city, and they found artifacts up there going back thousands of years, actually. But if this is actually taken on the ground, this is taken up there looking down at the city, although it feels too high to be taken from that far away. So I feel like this is taken from a plane. But either way, just stunning, stunning. And you can see that little ridge that goes between Machu Picchu and Huayna Picchu as you're going up. That ridge is as steep as it looks. There's some places there where it's only like 3 feet wide with this little, it's like a railing, like a little corded railing that's down by your calf. If you fall, you're just going to trip and smack your head before you fall 5,000 feet or so to your death. But man, this is just, what you're looking at right now is one of the single most stunning, captivating places I have ever been. Every single time I go, it feels like I'm seeing it again for the first time. I can't wait to be back in, I guess, just a little over a month from now, I'll be back there. And I just never get enough of it. If you go, you need to book 2 days to Machu Picchu. And if you're coming with us on one of our Maya Exploration Center tours or a tour in the future, this is what we're going to do. We will have 2 full days at Machu Picchu, because the likelihood is that you're going to get rained on, or it's going to be overly cloudy on one of those days, and you're not really going to be able to see the full view. Again, this is the Andean Amazon, so it rains a lot there. But what we'll do probably on the second day is you'll have a free day to be able to do your circuit around Machu Picchu, and then you sign up for Huayna Picchu, and then you hike up that back ridge all the way up to the top. And then what I like to do is hike all the way down from Huayna Picchu to the city of Machu Picchu, and then go have lunch, or like a really late lunch at this little cafeteria that's there, and then hike all the way down the mountain to Machu Picchu and walk. It's just a few miles back to the city of Aguas Calientes. You got to drink a lot of water because it's high in elevation, and if you get dehydrated while you're in Peru with the high elevation, you're going to shoot the rest of your trip. It's impossible to get rehydrated if you get dehydrated in Peru and you're not used to the elevation. It's really, really, really tough on you. That happened to me the last time I was there. I did this with 4 days left in our trip, and for the next 4 days, like, my nose was all stuffed up. I wasn't feeling well. It was bad. I guess I didn't drink enough water that day, and it shot the rest of my trip. But would do it again in a heartbeat. Am going to do it again next month, but I'm going to stay well hydrated. Electrolytes, caffeine, water. You need all of that in this high elevation terrain. But man, just beautiful. And to think of all the other ancient cities that are out there like this, that the Inca would have purposely hid from the Spaniards. Amazing. So this is a part that we haven't talked about. This is another example of the megalithic, but this is imperial style architecture here. This is the Temple of the Sun. This is the temple that Hiram Bingham encountered in 1911. And he said that it was the finest stonework ever achieved by ancient man throughout the entire world, greater than Egypt. Greater than Egypt. And in some ways I agree. The sharpness, the sleek style of the architecture that's here, how sharp the angles are, and how perfectly uniform they all are. They just shoot in straight lines, especially this Temple of the Sun. If you're able to go visit this, the photos that you can get here of how sharp these angles are and how they're just continuous, just mind-blowing. Now, they think this is the Temple of the Sun because of solar alignments that actually do line up in this temple, but obviously it must have been so much more than that as well. But if you want a cool rabbit hole to go down, look up the Temple of the Sun at Machu Picchu. Now, these days, I think unless you have very special permission, I don't even know if it's special permission that you can actually get booking your ticket online. I think maybe you have to know somebody to be able to get in here. And I don't mean like Egypt. I think you have to really know somebody or have a purpose to go in there. But it's definitely one of the most sacred places of all of Machu Picchu. Definitely a timekeeping shaman of some kind would have anticipated sunrises and sunsets from that chamber, and he would have been able to recalibrate where the Inca were in the year, because the Inca Sacred Valley is basically what fed their whole Tiwanaku empire and fed all these other nations and peoples and kingdoms around ancient Peru up into Ecuador, down into Chile. The Inca were responsible for feeding the mouths of something like 20 million people, and so they had to be timekeepers. And if you are a timekeeper in the ancient world, that means you understand the clock in the sky. You understand the secrets of the cosmos. And so that's probably a huge part. I'm guessing that Machu Picchu is basically an astronomical observatory, a university where people are learning to use the quipus, which is their kind of writing system using these knots and everything. I'm guessing it's a place for shamans, and probably a Playboy mansion for the emperor himself. Sounds like a good time. There are so many more subjects like this that we could do videos on, of ancient sites and their earliest photographs and how they look so much different when they were first discovered versus when they're excavated and reconstructed and everything. Or even species that went extinct shortly after they were photographed for the first time, or even ancient cultures and tribes, people in the Amazon or people out in the Polynesian world that were only photographed once and disappeared from the historical record. There are so many rabbit holes that we can go down here. So leave a comment in the comment section below suggesting what you would like me to dive into the earliest photographs of in the future. Like and subscribe for more videos of ancient civilizations and the mysteries of the ancient world, and I'll catch you next time.